Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a look at the Ace Fit Pro open-style headphones. So these are designed to be an alternative or competitor to the likes of, say, the Soundcore AeroFit 2s that we also saw a couple of months back. The advantage of a design like these is providing more awareness of what's going on around you because your ears aren't completely blocked off. There's that ambient situational awareness. But at the same time, all of these open-style headphones are lacking active noise cancellation, but they have a more secure fit as well, using that wing, so it might be better if you're jogging or running outdoors, or using them in environments where you want the added security as well as comfort with that ambient audio transparency effect. Now, these have also won an IF Design Award because they feature kind of an interesting LED lighting effect on the side of the headphones, and AceFast claims it's supposed to be a night safety function, again designed for joggers if you're running outdoors, helping other people see you in the dark. This is a function that's of course missing on almost all of the other wireless headphones that we've seen previously, making it a little bit more unique. Otherwise, we are talking about a pretty light frame overall, the buds themselves weighing at only around 7.6 grams, crafted out of silicone, should be quite soft, with the wire inside made out of titanium, and then also matching the spec found on the earlier AeroFit 2s by Soundcore, they feature large 20mm drivers inside. So the surface area here will be larger than the traditional 5 or 6mm found on regular buds that we've seen in the past, and with a larger driver, aka speaker, of course it should be able to provide more volume as well as impact for things like bass. Battery life is also mostly competitive, lasting around 25 hours combined with the case, and then continuously you can listen to them around 6 hours before needing to top up. It's not the longest endurance that we've seen, but considering the extra features here like the ambient light that you can turn on or off, as well as the larger drivers that will require a bit more juice to power, it seems reasonable enough. 10 minutes in the case will get you additional 2 hours of listening time, and it comes in a multitude of colors, including a more vibrant purple, pink, as well as a white and green version that we have here today. Last but not least, they also support an optional companion app, just like other premium wireless buds, to change the EQ, as well as in here adjust the colors of the LED lighting. They are RGB, available for both iOS and Android. Now, with that being said, you are paying a little bit more of a premium for that larger driver, as well as that attractive, rather unique design. They are selling actually a little bit north of 120 bucks, although you can find often coupons and discounts bringing it slightly lower. That being said, it's definitely not the cheapest pair of buds that we've seen in this category, so just keep that in mind. They are slightly more premium in terms of their positioning, as alluded to by the Pro branding there. In any case, the packaging here is also quite interesting because there's a kind of single-use perforated tear that you have to use to kind of slice open the box. I've never really seen anything like this. So it's presented well, but also means you kind of destroy the box when you open it up. And reiterating some of the accent lighting functions that you can find here, and also features a basic LED display on the inside of the transparent battery case to show you the specific battery percentage remaining, which is also pretty neat, using a very up-to-date Bluetooth 5.4 standard and the usual SBC and AAC audio codecs. That being said, for more of a Pro premium model, maybe it would have been nice if they also added support for high-res wireless codecs like LDAC or aptX lossless, which are unfortunately missing on this particular unit. Although on the other hand, because they are designed more as kind of sport style headphones, when you are moving and maybe jogging outside, perhaps you aren't necessarily sitting down and listening to music quite as closely, so perhaps you won't miss it that much as long as the audio quality is good enough, but still something to keep in mind. With kind of a red lining on the inside, once it rips off, you'll be able to pop the box open, and there is an internal layer that also has an interesting kind of circular pattern, so fairly decent presentation here, then flips open like a book. When we have the headphones here right on top, we'll take a closer look at this in a moment, and then down below we have just a quick user guide, and then we have a soft microfiber cleaning cloth for the case because it is a little bit on the shiny side, and also a pretty long, premium looking flat USB Type-C to Type-C charging cable. And now a closer look at the headphone case. Again, we have that transparent window, which I do think is a little bit more functional, I guess, compared to a completely opaque or matte finish. You can easily glance in to see if the buds are there or not, making it harder to accidentally lose or forget. And dimensions of the battery case are actually a little bit slimmer compared to the equivalent, again, Soundcore AeroFit 2. Here they are side by side. So it should be easy enough to slide into a pocket when you're on the go, although the design of these open-style headphones with a wing is still going to be a little bit larger versus more traditional wireless buds, because the stem here needs to take up a little bit more space, but all in all, not bad. And yeah, I do like this acrylic transparent case, even though it is a little bit more of a fingerprint magnet. I think it definitely looks rather attractive and unique, almost like a pebble. Type-C here on the back for charging. With that being said, one missing feature in the hardware would be support for Qi wireless charging that the AeroFit 2s do have. These will not actually top up the battery inside of the case, so just something to keep in mind since they are super slippery as well. So maybe adding in this particular hardware feature would be nice to see in a next generation revision. Anyways, the battery case opens up with a pretty satisfying LED indication here on the inside as well, rather unique, with the AceFast logo, and then they're held into place magnetically, pretty securely, and you also see that LED display pop onto live. It can show other status info like OK, in addition to the battery percentage, which is kind of interesting. And furthermore, you can see that the wireless buds themselves do have that semi-transparent look that continues on the battery case. So not only does it have that LED lighting, but you can also make out some of the circuitry. I think it's pretty cool, especially if you're a fan of this mecha type design. I think you'll like the semi-transparent look. That being said, again, the finish here is super shiny as well as slippery like a pebble, so it does have a tendency to just kind of roll around a little bit more easily on a tabletop. And there is a battery gauge for both the left and the right sides of the buds being displayed here as well. So showing a little bit more attention to detail, and you can see the AceFast logo there start to glow. When you are jogging or running outdoors, it just adds a little bit more of that safety functionality, and also I think looks rather cool from a design perspective. Kind of reminds me of the early Apple MacBooks when that icon would glow in the dark. The buds themselves are otherwise very soft and comfortable thanks to the liquid silicone coating with a little bit of a malleable bend there with the titanium wire, and the front surface here is also going to be touch sensitive when being used to play pause, skip track, and control other settings. On the very back here, you also have a pretty interesting, again, metal mesh covering up the drivers. It's kind of a two-piece design, in addition to the charging contacts and microphone. So the additional mesh here should allow more sound to pass through for added volume and perhaps slightly separating the effect of bass versus trebles and just making it sound a little bit more dimensional, which is actually a similar effect that we saw also on the AeroFit 2s from a couple of months back. Also had that kind of two-piece design, so mostly borrows that same concept. Now if we place them side by side, you can see that the AceFast version is actually a little bit smaller even, so pretty lightweight and comfortable for the most part. Some subtle touch controls when you're hitting on the capacitive touch sensor is also on by default as an indicator that you've pressed on the key successfully, giving you some feedback. So yeah, overall I do really like the design on these. I think it's actually quite tasteful and offers a just slightly more interesting aesthetic compared to the majority of other wireless buds that we've seen previously. Quite subtle and playful there. So opening the AceFast app, we can tap to add a device, and then once connected, you'll be able to see the battery percentage remaining on the buds as well as the battery case. You can also swipe left and right to change into lighting effects on the actual case side. So by default, it's in that gentle breathing pattern, but you can also change the rhythm to be slower or faster, as well as turn it into a single color instead. For example, let's say we want it to be displaying orange, you can see that color get reflected versus other shades like blue or purple, as well as this pink shade as well. You can see it kind of react as we play around with the headphones. It can change into different colors. So you're able to set it up through the companion app here and customize it based on your favorite color preferences. So that creates a pretty interesting effect, and again, as the battery case is closed down, it also casts kind of a halo when you are seeing it in a darker environment, making it easier to spot and also locate in the dark as well. So looking quite nice with those subtle RGB LED lights. And aside from the battery case, you can also customize, again, the lighting on the buds themselves just by swiping onto that main page. Tap on this once to, again, turn that particular logo on or off. That being said, the color on the wireless buds can't be changed. The RGB part is only applicable on the inside of the case, and so the headphones will always have this kind of white light, but overall still looking quite nice. As for other controls, including EQ, that's going to be under the sound effects. We can find a podcast mode, kind of a live music mode, bass boosted, as well as a EQ mode that will pull up a frequency slider that you can adjust yourself. There isn't a sound ID or hearing test mode that can be done automatically though, which might be a software trick worth adding in a future gen model. There's also going to be the controls for the touch sensors, so by default you're able to single click, double click, triple, and long press to adjust different commands. Out of the box, clicking once on the left and right sides can be used to change the volume higher or lower, but I can reassign it to other controls like play pause or disable certain commands that I'm not commonly using to prevent accidental triggers. So you can find all of these controls, including accessing the Smart Assistant on your phone as well. From the very top of the app, you can also check if there's any firmware updates available, so overall it's relatively simple and straightforward. Moving into performance and audio quality, I have to say that AceFast have done a pretty good job here. In fact, the drivers here do sound extremely close to the Soundcore Aerofit 2s, which is not bad at all. Not super surprising because the driver size is the same. So you do get plenty of impact for open-style headphones. It tends to be an area of weakness in the past because, again, they don't really tightly fit into the ear canals. So when listening to pop, EDM, drum beats give you a nice punch, and at the same time, it doesn't really sound too distorted or out of control either, still nicely balanced with the mids and trebles for areas like instrumentals and vocals to shine through. It doesn't sound compressed or tinny, with a pretty rounded full sound out of smaller buds in general. That definitely makes you feel like you're wearing larger headphones than they actually are, which is great. Again, the touch controls, because of the larger surface area, were also pretty easy to hit. Connectivity also felt quite stable thanks to, again, Bluetooth 5.4. I never really got disconnected as long as I was within around a 10-meter range from the phone. Left and right sides stay synced together quite well, although it is technically missing an ultra-low latency gaming mode. That would be also nice to see maybe in a future software update. But as it stands, even for casual YouTube videos, I found it to be still enjoyable enough. It never really got out of sync with some of those video clips. So performance was generally good and reliable. Now these can also be used in the independent mode. You can just pop out the left or right and wear it, and it still is going to function if you don't want to use it in the stereo mode for some reason. Furthermore, the sound was quite clean, so there's not too much static, hissing, or distortion, packing more than sufficient volume as well as good clarity overall for the music listening experience to be enjoyable. Especially in this category of buds, I think they do a more than good enough job for enjoying almost all genres of music that I tested them with. So thankfully, it's not just an instance of style over substance, but the sound quality does hold up as well. In fact, general sound quality, I would say, is pretty much par on par with the Aerofit 2s. I can't honestly say I prefer one or the other, which also means that surprisingly, I didn't miss the emission of LDAC, for example, all that much, since the drivers themselves are tuned so well and the overall performance was reliable enough as a casual pair of everyday buds, also for exercising, jogging, things like that. So again, audio performance here was quite strong. We are currently beginning an audio recording using the microphones built into the AceFast Pro wireless buds. How do they sound? Recording using the microphones AceFast Pro wireless buds. How do they sound? Test 1, 2, 3. So not shabby, I would say. Roughly average quality out of these smaller style wireless buds, which is to say it can definitely get the job done for just basic phone calls, having some conferences, things like that, with a little bit of environmental noise cancellation. But again, these smaller mics are not going to sound quite as rich compared to some of the kind of hi-fi dedicated microphones that we've seen. But again, for casual buds, it gets the job done. So that is more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the AceFast Pro, again, open style wireless buds. I do think they have a pretty unique looking design that I am a fan of, just because they are rather distinctive, again having that emergency breathing light if you are jogging, running outside, while adding to the aesthetics as well. Again, you're able to turn this on or off depending on your preferences. And the most important part of any audio product, sound quality, is also thankfully handled quite well because of the extra large driver inside. That being said, I do wish they added a couple more features like supporting technically a high-res audio codec for those looking for that, as well as maybe wireless charging support and even an autoplay and pause sensor when you're wearing the buds and removing them would all be nice to see considering they are pro-grade buds. But even so, general performance has been quite strong, and I do like all of the fun little touches from a lighting perspective, plus the more useful gauges here on the front for things like battery percentage and also charging. So if you like the way they look, sound quality mostly holds up, making them an interesting alternative to the aforementioned Soundcore Aerofit 2s, as well as some OpenShocks headphones, and the Nothing open style buds as well are competing all in the same space. But this one is an interesting intersection of very unique aesthetic design and a solid enough audio quality. Check out more details if you're interested in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. These have been the AceFast Pro open style headphone.